The Empire's emissaries waited in a chamber built by hands long turned to dust, orbiting a star that flickered like a dying lantern in the void. The structure, once the heart of a civilization that dared defy the Empire, now served as a fittingly ominous venue for such an encounter. Banners of the Vierithi Dominion fluttered in artificial winds, each one stitched with the sigils of subjugated worlds. The chamber was vast, echoing with the sound of boots that had marched across galaxies. They expected awe,
fear,
deference. What they got was a ship that looked like it had survived more bar fights than battles, its hull scarred with mismatched plating and a lopsided graffiti-stenciled name, Banana Republic. It docked without ceremony, ignoring half a dozen directives, and opened with the squeal of rusted hydraulics. 3 humans emerged. No honor guard, no symphonic fanfare, just a woman in aviator shades chewing gum, a tall man wearing a sweatshirt that read, Galactic Diplomacy. I came, I saw, I made it weird, and an old, hunched figure in a patched military coat who didn't walk so much as lope forward like he'd just rolled out of bed and regretted doing so. Supreme Herald Yerrick moved to intercept them, flanked by 2 Praetorians in polished crimson armor. You are late, he intoned, voice processed through ceremonial filters. The woman popped her gum. Traffic, she said, offering no further explanation. Also, we don't really do pageantry. Hope that's not a deal-breaker. Yerrick bristled, tail twitching in agitation beneath his robes. You were summoned by the Supreme Leader himself. Punctuality is expected. The old man peered over his cracked glasses. Son, back on Earth, we barely show up for our own funerals on time. The humans brushed past Yerrick and into the chamber like they owned the place. One of them snapped a quick selfie with a banner. Another pulled out a thermos and poured something steaming into a cup, offering it to a confused alien dignitary. It's coffee. It'll either enlighten you or kill you. Fun either way. High above, in a viewing platform wreathed in shadows and psionic projection, Supreme Leader Viereth Sun watched with growing bemusement. For 10,000 years, civilizations had knelt before him, trembling at his presence. These Terrans were laughing, smiling, breaching protocol like it was a sport. He reached out with his mind, probing their emotional layers. Chaos.
noise.
A symphony of conflicting impulses, memories layered like shrapnel. Where most minds held patterns, fears, loyalties, ambitions, these 3 were filled with jumbled contradictions. One was angry and serene at once. Another deeply mournful and yet delighted by the moment. The old man thought only of biscuits and whether the Empire had decent plumbing. Viereth recoiled slightly. Not in fear, but in confusion. At the table, the human delegation finally sat. The tall man leaned forward and said, All right, Supreme Leader, Galactic Warlord, Emperor of all you trample, etc., let's talk shop. We've read your memo. Lots of big words. Real Shakespeare in space stuff. But let's skip the part where you threaten us and just ask, what do you actually want? Yerrick's mouth opened to interject. The woman shot him a look. Let the grown-ups talk, row boy. A low ripple passed through the chamber. No one had ever spoken to Vieretha's herald like that. Not, and lived long enough to take another breath. Viereth stood slowly, the room dimming around him as his presence soaked into the walls. What I want, Terrans, is clarity. We have absorbed over 487 species into the Dominion. Some surrendered. Some resisted. All fell. The old man chuckled. Good for you, kid. Participation trophy or actual conquest? I do not jest. The tall one raised an eyebrow. Neither do we. You see, we don't do well with ultimatums. Historically, they haven't gone great for the folks delivering them. Viereth took a slow breath through his breathing mask. I have studied your people. Your chaos is legendary. Your wars monstrous. Your methods barbaric. True, said the woman. Also true for you from what we've heard. But here's the kicker. We're still standing. So are you.
Congrats.
We're all survivors. But you keep calling yourself supreme. That's cute. Want a cookie? Yerrick snapped. You speak blasphemy. No, said the old man. We speak human. It's a language of gallows humor, overconfidence, and desperate optimism. Takes getting used to. Viereth gestured, and the chamber silenced. Then we shall see who adapts. You will come to me, on my world, stand in my throne hall, before my empire's eye, and you will answer the question that plagues me. The humans exchanged glances. Question being? The woman asked. Viereth leaned forward, eyes burning like dying suns. How does a species like yours survive a universe like this? The tall one grinned. Bring snacks. That'll be a long story. As they stood and turned back toward their ship, the old man paused and looked back. You're gonna hate the punchline. Viereth watched them go, his mind spinning in ways it had not for centuries. For the first time in an age, he didn't know what came next. And that, more than anything, unnerved him. The throne citadel of Viereth soon loomed over the capital world like a wound in the sky, its architecture cruel and jagged, designed to remind lesser beings of their smallness. Every spire bled power, every corridor whispered obedience. From the moment the human delegation stepped into its hallowed halls, the Empire's eyes, literal and otherwise, bore down on them, expecting fear, awe, maybe a little sweat. They brought none. Ambassador Jules Carter, 36, former stand-up comedian, current pain-in-the-ass diplomat, adjusted her aviators and chewed the same gum she'd had since breakfast. Beside her, Dr. Thales Crane, cultural analyst and chaos enthusiast, looked around with the academic interest one might reserve for a particularly aggressive art museum. Bringing up the rear, Admiral Royce Halden scratched his neck and muttered something about how the Empire smelled like recycled lizard sweat and burnt incense. They were led into a massive chamber lined with statues of the fallen, monuments to the Empire's victories. Whole civilizations turned to trophies. The air was heavy with incense, psionic tension, and the weight of 10,000 years of unchallenged authority. Viereth waited on a raised dais, enthroned beneath a canopy of living stone that shifted subtly with his breathing. His voice, when it came, was not spoken but felt, a direct broadcast into the skull. You come dressed as if for jest, he said. Jules shrugged. You said formal, not funeral. You treat this audience with mockery. No, she said, stepping forward. We treat fear the way we always have, by laughing at it until it either goes away or shoots first. Viereth stood, all 10 feet of him draped in obsidian and sci-woven cloth. His eyes glowed with the weight of uncountable lifetimes. I have studied your people. I know your history. You burned your own world more times than I can count. You built weapons to unmake reality. You slaughtered yourselves for flags, for gods, for profit. Dr. Crane nodded. Yes, very grim. And yet here we are. Because unlike most empires, we learn. Slowly. Painfully. But we do. Viereth descended the steps. Every footfall echoed with the kind of authority that could shatter resolve. I saw your genocides. Your madmen. Your plagues. I looked into your minds and saw only screaming. Royce finally spoke, voice calm and graveled. And we looked into the abyss and built a patio. That's humanity for you. Viereth's expression barely flickered, but his tone sharpened. You are ungovernable. Illogical. You worship contradiction. Jules grinned. Thank you. It was not a compliment. Sure it was, she said. You just don't know it yet. The supreme leader narrowed his eyes. You confuse a reverence for strength. But you mistake me if you think I'm impressed by rebellion. I have crushed entire races for less insolence than your delegation's entrance. Crane held up a small device. Quick question. Are you broadcasting this live? The Praetorians around the chamber shifted at the blatant rudeness. Viereth tilted his head. Yes, he said. Perfect, Crane said. That's really going to help when the punchline lands. The humans seated themselves uninvited. Royce placed a small, battered chessboard on the table between them. Thought we'd try something new. A little metaphor, maybe. Game of Kings, Empire versus Improvisers. Viereth stared at the pieces. I do not play games. Neither do we, Royce replied, beginning to set up the board. But you'll find that everything is one. Jules folded her hands and leaned forward. We came here for a reason, Viereth. Not to grovel. Not to pick a fight. But to give you one last chance to realize what we are. And what are you? He asked. The variable, she said simply. The element no algorithm can factor. The species that doesn't make sense and never needed to. A silence fell across the chamber. Viereth paced once around them. You understand nothing of order, of structure. The galaxy functions because I forged it into shape. Royce shook his head. The galaxy suffers under that shape. We've seen what you do to dissent. And we've also seen what happens when someone mistakes compliance for peace. Viereth turned, robes flaring. I offer you wealth, alliance, knowledge beyond your imagining. Crane smirked. We imagined faster-than-light travel in science fiction before we had working microwaves. You're a few centuries late to that party. Jules stood now. You think you're dealing with barbarians. You think we don't understand the stakes. But we've been to the edge. We stared into the void of extinction and said, try harder. That's why we're dangerous. Not because we hate you, but because we're too damn weird to play by your rules. Viereth's power flared, psychic pressure crackling across the room. Then you are a threat. Jules met his burning gaze with a smirk. Only if you insist on treating us like a problem. For a long moment no one moved. The statues seemed to lean in, as if history itself were holding its breath. Finally, Viereth raised one long finger. Then you will return tomorrow. Stand before the tribunal. No tricks. No jokes. Sure, said Jules. But you should know, we don't do performances. We are the act. As they left the chamber, Viereth felt the unfamiliar chill of uncertainty wrap itself around his spine. They were not warriors. Not sorcerers. Not diplomats in any traditional sense. But somehow, they were still the most dangerous species he had ever met. The tribunal chamber was unlike anything humanity had ever constructed, not because it was alien in shape, but because it was unashamedly, terrifyingly perfect. Symmetry beyond human tolerance, geometry that whispered madness at the edge of vision. Columns rose like the frozen limbs of dead titans, and at the center floated the Judgment Core, a sentient mass of psionic latticework built from the minds of extinct seers. The humans stood alone before it. Jules Carter rolled her shoulders and muttered, Why do I feel like I'm about to be graded by a hive mind that eats sarcasm for breakfast? Royce Halden stood still as stone beside her, eyes scanning the shadows that moved as if breathing. Because that's probably accurate. Thales Crane took a slow step forward, arms raised in mock reverence. Behold, the great cosmic jury box. 10,000 years of colonizing the stars, and they still haven't figured out how to process a sense of humor. A deep vibration pulsed through the air, words not heard but implanted. Begin evaluation. Species designation, human. Subtype, Terran variant. Emotional instability index, catastrophically high. Logic compliance, fragmented. Recommended directive, containment or elimination. Jules raised her hand. Wow, already on the chopping block and we haven't even done anything yet. That's gotta be a new speedrun record. Viereth entered behind them, his robes trailing clouds of darkness. This tribunal is not for amusement. It is for reckoning. Do you still intend to resist our order with laughter? Crane nodded. It's not a tactic. It's a condition. Chronic irreverence. Terminal defiance. Incurable curiosity. It's what kept us alive when we had no right to be. A beam of cold light scanned them from above. Symbols shimmered into the air, battles, statistics, atrocities, projections of future conflict. The Empire had modeled humanity, wargamed them, simulated every plausible resistance, and lost, repeatedly. In every permutation, humans lost the first battle, then won the war because their logic broke the system. Jules whistled low. That's a lot of red text. You guys ran our numbers. Viereth's voice cut in like a scalpel. Your kind cannot be predicted. You do not react as other species do. Your pain makes you reckless. Your joy makes you dangerous. Even your loss drives innovation. Royce stepped forward now. That's because we're built for failure. We expect it.
We train in it.
And then we get up and ask if the universe wants to try again. The tribunal responded with another wave of data. Psychological profile, paradox engine, behavioral model, inconsistent. Probabilistic trajectory, unstable. Threat index, unquantifiable. Viereth turned to face the gathered silent watchers in the galleries above, envoys of 1,000 vassal worlds. You see now what I have feared. We cannot rule them. They will not be ruled. They spread ideas like viruses. Independence, resistance, irony. They teach the broken how to laugh, then how to fight. Crane gave a short bow. You're welcome. One of the minor envoys, a glittering jelly-like being from the Volari conclave, chimed in nervously. Then perhaps eliminate them? Before they infect the rest. Royce's voice dropped low.
Try it.
And learn what vengeance looks like when it runs on caffeine, grief, and stubbornness. The core glowed brighter now, shifting in shape, 1,000 minds screaming their calculations. Images flashed. Human rebellions on 12 worlds, ancient empires falling, Terran ideas destabilizing centuries of doctrine. And then something unexpected. A pause. Alternate directive proposal. Conditional accord. Vieretha's eyes narrowed. Explain. Proposed outcome. Observation. Limited contact. Controlled exchange. Do not conquer.
Contain for now.
Learn. Jules turned to face him fully. So, your galaxy-spanning AI death oracle just suggested not poking the weird species with a stick. Sounds like wisdom. Viereth stared at them, this time not as a ruler observing inferiors, but as an ancient creature finally grasping the shape of something he had always ignored. Not chaos. Not madness. Adaptation. You wage war with humor. You deflect with mockery. You rally with stories. You weaponize hope. His voice was quiet now, almost reverent. How did your kind become like this? Crane tilted his head. Trial and error. Heavy on the error. Royce nodded. We were never the biggest, the fastest, or the most unified. So we became unpredictable. And once we realized we were the monsters in our own myths, we started rewriting the story. Jules leaned in just slightly. You're not wrong to be afraid of us, Viereth. But fear isn't the end. It's the start. You want to understand us? Stop trying to conquer. Start trying to listen. The tribunal chamber pulsed once more. The judgment came through in a single word, echoing into eternity. Deferred. For the first time in the Empire's long, brutal history, a species had not been sentenced. Not enslaved. Not erased. Humanity had not won, but neither had they lost. They had broken the system. Again. As the humans turned to leave, Viereth did not follow. He stood at the center of his empire's judgment engine, watching them go. Something in him, the part that remembered the long-lost chaos of his own youth, felt both dread and curiosity. Tell me, he called out, voice almost human now. When the time comes and the galaxy stands between order and madness, what will you choose? Jules glanced over her shoulder with a grin. Probably both. But we'll bring snacks. And then they were gone, walking out of the tribunal chamber like they'd just aced the universe's weirdest interview. Behind them, the Empire was already starting to change.